This is the story you've heard whispers about, an alleged extraterrestrial encounter that defies explanation, an eerie midair event where flight crew members claim they faced something beyond human understanding. It's 1990, and an Air Mexico plane is making a routine repositioning trip from Nassau to Mexico City. Outside the windows, the night sky seems endless, a silent expanse filled with both promise and dread. Then, without warning, one of the flight attendants, known only as Bertha T., spots something profoundly unsettling on the aircraft's wing. Bright flashes of light, malfunctioning instruments, and even hints of abduction swirl around this extraordinary account. The crew would later speak of haunting visions and an all-consuming sense of being watched. Some dismissed it as fatigue or a shared hallucination. Others insisted the chilling evidence and matching testimonies pointed to a genuine contact with unknown entities. Decades later, they're still grappling with unanswered questions about lost time and the blank spaces in their memories. But to uncover the truth behind this night of terror and mystery, we need to travel back to that flight's final minutes before dawn. Only then can we begin to piece together the puzzle of what really happened at 30,000 feet above the Earth. The 1990 Air Mexico mystery. In early 1990, the skies over North America were quieter than one might expect for an era increasingly fascinated by extraterrestrial phenomena. Yet, hidden within these routine flight corridors lay the roots of what some would later call the most chilling commercial flight encounter in UFO history. At this time, Air Mexico was a trusted carrier, and repositioning flights, like the one leaving Nassau, Bahamas, bound for Mexico City, were uneventful stepping stones in the airline's daily operations. Pilots, co-pilots, and flight attendants would often use these flights to rest, catch up on personal reading, or simply enjoy the calm skies without passengers on board. Nassau itself was a bustling tourist haven, filled with beachgoers and vacationers hopping between island paradises. Mexico City, on the other hand, stood as one of the largest urban centers in the world, a place where legends, mythologies, and modernity coexisted in equal measure. Few people realized that, even back then, Mexico had its share of UFO-related lore. Reported sightings of strange lights or unexplained aerial phenomena occasionally made local headlines, though these stories were often dismissed by skeptics. Within the flight crew on that fateful Nassau to Mexico City run were several individuals who preferred to remain anonymous. Aside from one, Bertha T. A dedicated flight attendant in her early 30s, Bertha was known for her professionalism and even-keeled demeanor. Colleagues often remarked that she had a calming presence, essential for a job that demanded dealing with travelers of all personalities. The cockpit was staffed by equally seasoned professionals, pilots who prided themselves on maintaining composure under any circumstance. No one in the crew expected what was about to unfold. There had been no formal reports of unusual weather, no warnings from air traffic control, no mention of unidentified radar contacts. Everyone assumed they were embarking on an ordinary repositioning flight, but soon a series of events would shatter that illusion of routine. Rumors would later spread, suggesting possible abduction attempts, strange evidence of onboard intruders, and anomalies that defied easy explanation. For the men and women aboard that Air Mexico flight, an otherwise peaceful overnight journey was about to transform into a mystery that still defies conclusive answers. Night of the Gray Visitors. For the crew of this Air Mexico repositioning flight in early 1990, the journey from Nassau to Mexico City initially unfolded like any other. The cockpit lights glowed softly, complementing the steady hum of the aircraft's engines. With no passengers on board, the flight attendants moved at a relaxed pace, checking supplies and tidying the galley. 30,000 feet in the air, the world below was cloaked in darkness, punctuated only by the faint shimmer of city lights in the distance. Shortly after midnight, flight attendant Bertha T. found herself restless. Hoping to fight off the late-night lull, she decided to chat with the pilots. According to her later statements, it was during this visit to the cockpit that she first noticed something unusual: a bright, pulsating glow outside the plane's front windows. Initially, the cockpit assumed it was another aircraft, or perhaps a reflection from an instrument panel. But the light's intensity grew, and it began to shift in a way none of them had seen before. Bertha would later remark, "It was as if it had its own intelligence, moving closer like it was deliberately watching us." As the minutes passed, the tension in the cockpit escalated. The captain radioed air traffic control to check if any other aircraft were in the vicinity, but they received no reports of nearby traffic. Instruments started flickering. The altitude indicator briefly froze, the navigation system displayed erratic data, and communications crackled. With confusion mounting, Bertha returned to the cabin to see if the other flight attendant had witnessed anything similar. That's when she caught a glimpse of something, small figures outside the passenger windows, clinging to the aircraft's wing. Heart pounding, she stepped closer for a better look. The shapes were about 3 to 4 feet tall, with large black eyes and a pale grayish skin tone. One appeared to press its face against the window. Bertha recalled being seized by a sense of absolute dread. She rubbed her eyes, hoping this was just a trick of light or fatigue. Yet the figures remained, moving in a strangely fluid manner against the howl of the high-altitude wind. Alarmed, Bertha alerted her colleague, who gasped upon seeing the same sight. Both were torn between reporting it to the cockpit or convincing themselves it was some bizarre hallucination. Their resolve hardened when 2 more of the beings appeared outside, this time near a row of empty seats further back. The attendants felt simultaneously terrified and transfixed. Their training told them to remain calm, but the uncanny reality shattered that composure. Meanwhile, the pilots experienced a series of bright flashes that illuminated the cockpit. One pilot described it as like being inside a camera flash that just wouldn't end. He struggled to maintain control of the aircraft as the altimeter started spinning. A suffocating hush enveloped the plane's interior, muting even the engines to a distant drone. Time felt distorted. Minutes dragged on like hours. After what seemed like an eternity, though later estimates suggest it lasted only about 90 minutes, the glaring light vanished, and with it, the strange beings. When normal sound returned, the plane's instruments snapped back into operation. The crew exchanged fearful glances, unsure if they'd imagined it all or if they'd just narrowly escaped something truly alien. Disturbed and exhausted, no one spoke for several long minutes. There were still miles to go before landing in Mexico City, but for Bertha and the others, the real journey into the unknown had already begun. Unanswered questions. In the immediate aftermath of the alleged midair encounter, the Air Mexico crew chose to remain tight-lipped. Unlike some high-profile UFO cases that quickly capture media attention, local news outlets in Mexico and the Bahamas scarcely mentioned this incident. Word filtered out only when rumors started circulating among UFO researchers, eventually prompting questions about why no formal statements were made. Airline representatives offered no public comment, and there are no records of law enforcement or aviation authorities launching a dedicated probe. This silence may have arisen from the crew's own fears of ridicule and potential career repercussions, concerns that left critical information unreported at the time. Those seeking concrete evidence faced immediate hurdles. No scorched paint on the aircraft's exterior was documented, and there were no confirmed ground reports of unidentified radar signatures. While flight attendant Bertha T. insisted that cockpit instruments malfunctioned and time itself seemed distorted, these claims went uncorroborated by any official flight logs or maintenance reports. For some, this absence of physical proof was deeply frustrating. Others argued it was precisely what one might expect if anomalous forces, unrecognized or actively concealed, were at work. Intriguingly, the crew's individual testimonies have remained consistent over the years. Bertha T's accounts of seeing a face pressed against the cabin window matched the recollections of her fellow flight attendant. who also reported glimpsing small, grayish beings moving along the wing. According to both, the plane descended into a bizarre hush, with an eerie calm replacing the usual roar of the engines. The pilots likewise described bright, disorienting flashes outside the cockpit and navigational systems going haywire. Yet skeptics note a few points of contention. Some versions of the story mention 3 creatures, while others suggest there may have been more. A few skeptical voices question whether anxiety and group suggestion could have fused into a single, shared delusion. Naturally, theories about what truly happened run the gamut. The most straightforward UFO interpretation holds that an extraterrestrial craft interfered with the aircraft's electronics, possibly attempting to board or examine the plane. Supporters of this view cite worldwide patterns of pilot encounters with unexplained aerial phenomena, hinting that the Air Mexico case might be part of a much larger puzzle. A variant of this theory involves advanced or experimental technology, possibly belonging to a clandestine military project, capable of producing strong electromagnetic fields that could disrupt instruments and cause illusions of strange beings. While speculative, proponents argue that such technology might explain the crew's sense of missing time and the possible memory gaps. Skeptics, meanwhile, suggest other possibilities. Some point to fatigue and heightened stress as likely contributors to hallucinations or misinterpretations. The reflective surfaces of cockpit windows, combined with atmospheric anomalies, can play tricks on the eyes, especially late at night. Others propose that a rare but natural electromagnetic event could have scrambled the instruments. The sightings of creatures on the wing, they argue, might have been illusions magnified by panic and an overactive imagination. Without corroborating radar data or flight records, these arguments are difficult to disprove. UFO researchers, including Mexican investigator Luis Ramirez Reyes, have occasionally revisited the story, noting its strong parallels with other midair sighting reports. However, definitive answers remain elusive. The lack of official documentation, the crew's reluctance to speak publicly, and the conflicting nature of secondhand rumors leave the incident mired in uncertainty. To this day, no single explanation fully accounts for the quiet engines, the flickering panels, the strange lights, and the alleged creatures outside the window. While the 1990 Air Mexico encounter endures as a compelling chapter in UFO lore, it also stands as a stark reminder that extraordinary claims, no matter how vividly described, remain forever in question without verifiable proof. The unresolved 1990 Air Mexico encounter. Decades after that unsettling flight, no official explanation has ever been offered. The crew's accounts, from the eerie silence of the engines to the figures glimpsed on the wing, have remained consistent, yet impossible to conclusively verify. Even today, debates flourish among aviation circles and UFO researchers alike, each theorizing about electromagnetic anomalies, clandestine technology, or encounters with something not of this world. For those who experienced it firsthand, life was never quite the same. Some continued flying, but kept their stories private, wary of judgment. Others found themselves searching for answers in unlikely places, poring over scattered UFO case files in hopes of discovering a parallel that might confirm or refute their own experience. Rumors still surface occasionally, suggesting similar sightings or unexplained aircraft malfunctions in the same corridor of sky. Yet nothing has ever matched the sheer strangeness of that 1990 report. Were these flight professionals the unwitting witnesses of advanced technology beyond our current understanding? Or does a simpler, more terrestrial explanation exist, one that eludes even the most devoted skeptics? Ultimately, the 1990 Air Mexico encounter stands as a haunting reminder that some mysteries resist tidy conclusions. Perhaps somewhere in the silent hours of the night sky, the truth still waits to be discovered. Did the 1990 Air Mexico crew genuinely witness extraterrestrial visitors? Or could a more conventional explanation account for this bizarre mid-air event? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching Mr. Alien Files. If you enjoyed this ufology mystery, continue exploring the unexplained in our next video. Let's keep pushing the boundaries of what we know and what we dare to believe.